Hello everyone, welcome to our lesson in music, and it is all about the band. Do you know what our instruments are played in a band? How about during fiesta? You can hear the sound of the bands playing along the streets and on stage. What is band? Band is a group of people playing musical instruments together. Band is a French word bande, meaning troop. It was originated in Germany. Particularly, we have different types of bands. We have military bands, marching bands, rock bands, jazz bands. Musicians in a band usually play various kinds of instruments: brass, woodwind, and percussion. And in percussion, we have two classifications: tuned percussion instruments and non-tuned percussion instruments. So let us try it out. What are these word means? Brass wind instruments, woodwind instruments, and percussion instruments. Let's start with brass wind instruments. That are example of brass wind instruments. We have trumpet, trombone, tuba, and French horn. Now, what are these brass wind instruments? They are tubular instruments. They produce sound through forceful blowing of air into the tubes with the mouth. The main characteristic of brass wind instruments is the shape. So look at the shape of brass instruments. They look alike, even if they have the different in size and different in shape, but they look alike. This instrument usually make shrill, loud, ready notes when played. So let's start with trumpet. Trumpet, trumpet, trumpet. What is trumpet? Is a cylindrical tube, usually 122 centimeters. It has 3 bulbs and produces a bright, ringing sound. This one, the trumpet. Next, the trombone. Long cylindrical tube bent upon itself twice, ending in a bell-shaped mouth. It is also called U-shaped bend. Let's have the tuba. Provides the lowest notes in brass wind family. And let's have the French horn. It has a conical tube about 366 centimeters long, coiled into a circular shape and bulbs. Often as accompaniment but it sometimes plays the melody. Yes. So that was the brass-wind instruments. Now let's go to the next. Woodwind instruments. Let us highlight the word wood. That are examples of woodwind instruments. Woodwind instruments are musical instruments that produce sound when the musician blows air through the mouthpiece. Most of these instruments are made of wood, but they can also be made of other materials like metals or plastics. There are two types of woodwind instruments. Can be flute and reed instruments. Flute produce sound when air is blown across an edge, while the reed instruments produce sound when air is forced between the reed and the mouthpiece. As the reed vibrates, sound is produced. Now let's start with flute, piccolo, oboe, clarinet, bassoon, and the saxophone. So let us identify it one by one. Flute. I know that you are familiar with flute. Flute is played sideways. Its tube is about 67 centimeter long and is under cylindrical shape. Now let's have the piccolo. It's sometimes called a baby flute. So, as you can see, that it is small. That is why piccolo is also known as baby flute. It is half the size of a flute. It plays the highest note. Again, piccolo plays the highest note. Now let's have the oboe. It's a double reed instrument. The oboe is played vertically and is very good in producing melancholic tunes. Let's have the clarinet. A single reed cylindrical instrument that is about 66 centimeter long. It produces a very soft sound that can get gradually louder. Bassoon is a double reed instrument with a conical tube. It is the bass of the woodwind family. Next we have the saxophone. It's a conical bore musical instrument classified as woodwind because of the wooden reed it uses. It is played with a single reed mouthpiece similar to that of a clarinet. So, that was the woodwind instruments: flute, piccolo, oboe, clarinet, bassoon, and saxophone. Next, we have the percussion instruments: xylophone. In percussion instruments, we have tune, classify it into two: tuned percussion instrument and non-tuned percussion instrument. Let's start with the tuned percussion instrument. We have two examples: xylophone and glockenspiel. Xylophone, this one, consists of wooden bars graduated in length that are struck by mallets or strings. Each bar is tuned to a pitch of a musical scale. Next, we have the glockenspiel. is similar to a xylophone, but it has the bars made of metal plates, producing a metallophonic sound when struck with a mallet. So that is a percussion instrument under tuned percussion instrument. Now let's have percussion instruments under non-tuned percussion instrument. Oh, we have many. We have cymbals, tambourine, snare drum, triangle, bass drum, and maracas. Okay, let us identify them one by one. Cymbals are pair of sounds. This one. Cymbals are a pair of round brass plates played by striking against each other or with a drumstick to produce a crashing sound. Next, tambourine is a one-headed drum tightly covered with a piece of animal skin. Around its side are small metal discs that jingle against each other when the drum head is struck. Next, we have the snare drum or side drum. It is also known as side drum. Has two drum heads, the upper head and the lower head. Here, this one, the upper head and the lower head. The upper head is struck by wooden drumsticks. The lower head has strings called snares that are stretched across it. Next, we have the triangle. It's a triangular steel instrument that is open in one corner. It is held by a cord and is struck with a metal rod to produce a tinkling sound. Tinkling. Cling, cling, cling. Next, we have the bass drum. Bass drum is a large drum that produces a loud, deep sound. In military and marching bands, it has two heads and it is played with a pair of heavy felt covered sticks or mallets. Lastly, we have the maracas. Are always played in pairs. They are played by shaking them in a circular motion. So, not just by shaking them horizontally, but you are going to shake it circular motion. Moving the maracas up and down creates variation and accent to its sound. So that was all about the lesson entitled band. Again, we have three types of instruments: the brass wind instruments, the woodwind instruments, and the percussion instrument. And the third one, which is the percussion instrument, classified into two: the tuned percussion instrument and the non-tuned percussion instrument. Thank you for listening and keep safe, everyone.